For years, David Mann stayed quiet. He stayed smiling. He stayed loyal. He stood in the background, playing the funny man, making people laugh, while holding things together behind the scenes. Fans saw him as happy, grateful, and blessed. But you won't believe what was really happening during all those years. Let me tell you, the truth that finally came out was nothing like what people expected. At the center of this story was Tyler Perry, the same man who built his name on church plays, faith-based stories, and strong moral lessons. He was seen as a leader, a mentor, and a man of God in the entertainment world. But according to David Mann, behind the laughter, behind the wigs, and behind the gospel songs, there was another side. This is how a beautiful partnership slowly turned into something painful and silent. People thought David Mann had everything. He was famous, respected, and loved. He played Mr. Brown, one of the most popular characters in Tyler Perry's universe. Audiences laughed at his loud suits, silly jokes, and goofy behavior. But while the world laughed, David carried something heavy inside. But here's the shocking part. He carried it for years without saying a word. Tyler Perry and David Mann were not just co-workers. They were seen as brothers. Together, they changed Black stage plays and family TV forever. Their work felt like ministry. It felt real. It felt honest. Fans trusted them. Churches supported them. Families grew up watching them. What makes this story different? It was not just about fame or money. It was about trust, faith, and control. In the early 2000s, Tyler Perry was rising fast. He had come from nothing, and his story inspired millions. His character Medea became iconic. His plays filled theaters, and right there beside him was David Mann. David brought heart to the stage. He brought humor that felt natural and warm. Along with his wife, Tamela Mann, he became a strong pillar in Perry's world. People did not just see characters. They saw family. But behind closed doors, things were not balanced. Tyler Perry controlled everything. He was the writer, the director, the producer, and the star. David Mann, even after years of loyalty, remained in a supporting position. He followed instructions. He respected the vision. He trusted the process. The craziest part was that he believed it was all for God and for the people. Whispers began on set. Some people noticed that while Tyler's empire kept growing, others stayed stuck in old contracts from the stage play days. These contracts limited their earnings and their voice. Still, David said nothing. He smiled, he showed up, he did his job. People wondered if it was loyalty or fear, but David never explained. He stayed silent. As the years passed, something inside him changed. During the production of Meet the Browns, the pressure became heavier. On screen, the show was a success. Ratings were high. Fans loved Mr. Brown more than ever. But off screen, David was hurting. His creative input was slowly being ignored. Ideas he cared about were pushed aside. Scenes he prepared for were changed without warning. One moment stood out. David had prepared for a scene where Mr. Brown showed real emotion. It was deeper. It was honest. He believed it would connect with people. But at the last minute, the scene was removed. Tyler said it was too deep. David felt crushed. That moment stayed with him. This is where it gets interesting because that was not just about a scene. It was about respect. There were also claims that ideas David helped create were later presented as Tyler's alone. Jokes, moments, and story beats that came from teamwork slowly became one-sided. For someone who had stood beside Tyler from the beginning, it felt like being erased. Still, David stayed quiet. He did not complain publicly. He did not fight. He just pulled back inside himself. Then came a day on set that changed everything. Tension finally broke. David spoke up. He questioned the direction. He questioned the heart behind it all. He asked where he fit anymore. Witnesses said Tyler's response was cold. He reminded David that it was his vision and his authority. That moment hit hard. Destiny took an unexpected turn right there. After that day, nothing felt the same. Publicly, David remained smiling. Privately, he was done. He slowly stepped away. Fewer roles came. The partnership faded. Fans noticed, but no one knew why. The silence was loud, but the truth stayed hidden. And that truth was only the beginning of something much bigger. As David Mann slowly pulled back, many people thought it was just a career choice. Some believed he wanted rest. Others assumed he was focusing on gospel music with his wife. But you won't believe how deep this silence really went. Let me tell you, this was not peace. This was pain hidden behind prayer. Behind the scenes, David was watching something uncomfortable unfold. He noticed that he was not the only one drifting away from Tyler Perry's world. Familiar faces began to disappear. Actors who once felt like family were suddenly gone, without explanation. Fans asked questions, but no clear answers came. This is how doubt slowly entered the picture. Cassie Davis, known and loved as Aunt Bam, had been a strong presence for years. She made people laugh, but she also stood firm in her faith. Then, quietly, she vanished from projects. Rumors spread that she had issues with the direction the shows were taking. Some said she spoke up when things no longer felt God-centered. Others said she felt unheard. Whatever the reason, her absence raised eyebrows. But here is the shocking part. No one from the top explained anything. Then there was Patrice Lovely, the actress behind the loud and over-the-top Hattie. Fans loved her energy, but behind the scenes, she reportedly felt used more than valued. Her character stayed big, but her voice stayed small. She too stepped back quietly. When people looked closely, the pattern became hard to ignore. What makes this story different? These were not random exits. These were people connected by the same experience. Tasha Smith's situation became more public. She later spoke about having to fight for respect and fair treatment. She hinted that working under one vision, one voice, and one control was exhausting. She never attacked Tyler Perry directly, but her words carried weight. David Mann listened. He saw himself in those stories. The craziest part was realizing that staying silent may have helped this system continue. For years, David had been seen as the loyal one, the safe one, the proof that everything was fine. His silence protected the image. His smile reassured the audience. But inside, he was questioning everything. Faith was no longer enough to cover the feeling of being small. Loyalty began to feel like servitude. Destiny took an unexpected turn when David finally allowed himself to admit that truth. The turning point came quietly, not on a big stage, but during a podcast interview. David did not name anyone. He did not accuse. But his words were clear. When he said, "Loyalty without respect becomes servitude," people froze. Fans immediately connected the dots. Social media exploded. Comments flooded in. Everyone asked the same question. Was he talking about Tyler Perry? This is where it gets interesting because David still chose grace. He did not chase headlines. He did not drag anyone through the mud. He spoke calmly, like someone who had already healed. But the honesty in his voice shook people. It felt real. It felt overdue. And for many, it confirmed long-held suspicions. As the noise grew louder online, David stayed quiet again. But this time, the silence had meaning. It was no longer fear, it was strength. People began revisiting old interviews, old clips, old moments. They noticed how David often stood back while others spoke. They noticed how his character stayed stuck in comedy, never allowed to grow deeper. The truth had been hiding in plain sight. Meanwhile, Tyler Perry said nothing. No statements, no interviews, no posts. The silence from the top felt heavy. Some believed he was protecting his brand. Others believed he was hoping the storm would pass. But in the court of public opinion, silence can be loud. And this silence made people listen even more to David's words. Still, this was not the full story. There was someone else at the heart of this journey. Someone who had seen it all. someone who carried the weight quietly, just like David, his wife, Tamela Mann, and what she knew would change how people understood everything. Tamela Mann had always been more than just David's wife. She was his partner, his strength, and his anchor in a world that could feel harsh and unfair. While David played the loud, goofy Mr. Brown on stage, Tamela carried calm, steady energy both on and off screen. She sang powerful gospel songs, touched hearts with her faith, and quietly watched the tensions that were building behind the bright lights of Tyler Perry's productions. You won't believe how much she understood without ever speaking publicly. Let me tell you, she was seeing the cracks in the empire long before anyone else. As Tyler Perry's productions grew, the content began to shift. The stories became less about faith and more about drama, humor, and sometimes edgy material that made Tamela uncomfortable. She noticed profanity, sexual jokes, and scenes that seemed far from the gospel-based messages she valued. This is how she started advising David, not to fight, not to complain, but to protect their spirit. She reminded him that faith was more important than fame and peace more valuable than approval. For years, David had stayed loyal, believing that compromise was part of the journey. But privately, Tamela would tell him, "You don't have to say it loud, but you do have to be honest with yourself." She helped him see that staying silent might protect others' images, but it was slowly hurting their own souls. She reminded him that there was a way to leave without burning bridges, to step back without causing a scandal. But here is the shocking part. This guidance wasn't easy. It meant walking away from the empire they helped build. Together, David and Tamela began creating their own path. They started focusing on gospel music, family-based reality projects, and content that reflected their faith and their values. They did not publicly attack Tyler Perry or the empire he built. Instead, they quietly reclaimed their voice. Tamela's albums began topping charts, and David focused on storytelling in ways he could control. What makes this story different? They didn't just leave a toxic space. They built something better for themselves, one step at a time. Even as they flourished independently, the industry noticed the absence of David and Tamela Mann in Perry's productions. Fans began asking questions, why aren't they working with Tyler anymore? When Tamela was asked directly, she said, "Sometimes when your spirit no longer aligns with the project, it's time to gracefully step away. Doesn't mean there's hate, just means we grow." People understood immediately. This was confirmation. The Manns had chosen authenticity over loyalty to a system that no longer reflected their values. But even after stepping back, David couldn't fully release the past. There was one event that had left a deep scar, a promise Tyler Perry allegedly made and then broke. Back in 2017, Tyler had discussed a spin-off series centered entirely around Mr. Brown, a chance for David to shine in a role he had lived for decades. David poured his heart into the project. He wrote notes, pitched ideas, and prepared mentally and emotionally. The craziest part, the show never happened. Months later, a similar show was launched with a different cast using elements David had suggested. No credit, no acknowledgement, just erasure. That betrayal, more than anything, confirmed what David had been feeling for years. He realized the partnership he had trusted was not the brotherhood he believed. It wasn't ministry, it was control and business. Destiny took an unexpected turn in that moment, and David quietly decided to stop letting loyalty blind him. He understood that he could serve his purpose and still maintain his dignity. David spoke about this in a podcast recently. He didn't name names, but the message was clear. "You know what hurts the most?" he said. "It's not when strangers take advantage of you. It's when people who preach God's name convince you that loyalty is ministry, when really it's manipulation." The room went silent. Every listener knew exactly who he was talking about. This is where it gets interesting because finally, after years of silence, the truth was out and it didn't sound like anger. It sounded like clarity. For the first time, fans saw David as more than Mr. Brown. They saw a man who had been loyal, who had been faithful, but who finally understood that faithfulness without respect was empty. They saw someone who had taken control of his life, his work, and his voice without needing to attack anyone publicly. This revelation set the stage for what would happen next. A revelation that could change the way fans saw the entire Tyler Perry universe. After speaking on the podcast, David Mann felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry, and he wasn't trying to destroy anyone's reputation. He simply told the truth. Fans, for the first time, began to see the man behind Mr. Brown, not just the funny character they loved. You won't believe how much this changed the conversation online. Social media exploded with support, questions, and debates. Let me tell you, people were shocked that someone so loyal had been quietly sidelined for years. Meanwhile, Tyler Perry stayed silent. No interviews, no public statements, no social media comments. This is where it gets interesting. His silence said as much as any words could. People began to wonder if the empire he built on faith and loyalty could be questioned. And slowly, other former collaborators started to speak in vague but meaningful ways, hinting at their own experiences of being ignored or controlled. It seemed David's words had opened the floodgates. The Manns didn't just walk away, they flourished. David focused on his own projects, creating content that reflected his values, his faith, and his family. Tamela continued her music career, releasing songs that topped charts and touched millions. Together, they built a brand rooted in authenticity, joy, and ministry that they could fully control. This is how they turned betrayal into empowerment. Every song, every show, every public appearance became a statement. They no longer needed someone else's permission to shine. In a recent live concert, Tamela sang her powerful hit, "Take Me to the King," and David stood beside her, not as Mr. Brown, but as David Mann, the husband, the father, the man reclaiming his voice. When he spoke to the audience afterward, he said, "Sometimes God has to remove you from the spotlight of someone else so he can shine one on your truth." The crowd erupted. It wasn't just a performance, it was testimony. But here's the shocking part. This moment showed that leaving behind control, manipulation, and betrayal could lead to real freedom. Fans began to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the Tyler Perry empire. For decades, David's silence had protected an image of loyalty, family, and faith. Now, the cracks were showing. People questioned, debated, and reflected. Was Tyler Perry using spirituality to control those around him? Or was this simply a story of ambition and human imperfection? What makes this story different? It wasn't about scandal. It was about truth, integrity, and courage to walk away without destroying anyone else. David's journey became a lesson for many. He showed that loyalty should never cost your voice, your peace, or your soul. He spoke with calm, clarity, and honesty, letting the world see him as he truly was. And even though Tyler Perry did not respond publicly, the conversation had shifted. Fans, critics, and insiders all watched closely, wondering who might speak next. In the end, David Mann's story is not just about Hollywood, it's about faith, family, respect, and reclaiming your own identity. It's about knowing when to stay, when to step back, and when to rise on your own terms. The craziest part, by stepping away quietly, he became louder than ever. His truth resonated further than any comedy ever could. And now the world is watching. David and Tamela Mann have reclaimed their voice, their art, and their spirit. They proved that leaving a shadow does not mean failure. It can mean freedom. Fans are left asking questions, reflecting on loyalty, and realizing that sometimes the quietest people have the most powerful stories.